The Iran-Israel war is not just about Iran, not just about Israel. It's about all of us in South Asia, in the wider global South. It's about how one act of aggression by a nuclear armed state can redraw alliances, destabilize entire regions, and push us all closer to the brink. And yet, while Israel bombs, while America defends the indefensible, while much of the Muslim world stays shamefully silent, millions of ordinary people everywhere, almost everywhere, are saying no more war, no more lies, no more hypocrisy. I'm Marvi Sirmed. Welcome to New Wave Global. And today on Unraveled, we expose what this war really means for our region and why South Asia must choose peace, not proxy wars, not militarism. Stay with me. Before we begin today, let me say this very clearly and unequivocally. Criticizing the Israeli government's military aggression does not mean supporting Hamas or any kind of violence. It does not mean being anti Semitic, and it certainly does not mean opposing Jewish people, many of whom, in fact, thousands, have been marching in streets from Tel Aviv to New York, from London to Toronto, courageously demanding peace, an end to occupation, and an end to war crimes. It is in this spirit, the spirit of truth, of justice, of anti war, of peace, that we bring you today's episode. The Iran Israel conflict, triggered by Israel's reckless airstrikes on Iranian territory on June the 16th, followed by Tehran's calculated retaliation, is not just another flare up in the Middle East. Its shockwaves are already reverberating across South Asia, a region deeply intertwined with the rivalries and alliances now in flux. For India, a close military partner of Israel, this war sharpens its strategic alignment with emerging US led blocs, such as I2U2 Group and broader Indo Pacific partnerships. By offering New Delhi probably the opportunities to expand intelligence sharing, some kind of defense cooperation, and maybe joint strategic narratives that position Iran as a destabilizing force in the region. For Pakistan, historically opposed to Israeli aggression and aligned with both China and Iran equally, not equally, but, aligned with both of them. The crisis presents both risks and opportunities amid a careful diplomatic balancing act with Washington. In Afghanistan, though the Taliban regime has remained largely silent, the conflict complicates their regional positioning. In Sri Lanka and other smaller states, while governments outwardly maintain neutrality, the rising global instability further threatens their already fragile economies. But the most immediate and dangerous fault line runs across the India Pakistan border. There, a fragile and tense calm prevails after India's armed aggression inside Pakistan's sovereign territory last May, an act widely seen as a blatant violation of international law. A so called ceasefire was negotiated, though New Delhi continues to insist it is merely a pause in what it calls Operation Sindoor, disturbingly named after a patriarchal symbol of marriage and control. Let us be clear, this was outright military aggression, not some sanitized operation. Now, the Iran Israel confrontation threatens to destabilize this precarious situation even further by polarizing regional alliances, emboldening hardliners on both sides of India Pakistan divide, and increasing the risk of renewed skirmishes should either side perceive shifting alignments or provocations. To begin with, we must understand that South Asia today is one of the critical theaters in the emerging Cold War between the United States and China. India, staunchly anti China, has aligned itself ever more openly with Washington, Tokyo, and Tel Aviv. New Delhi's growing strategic embrace of Israel, seen in its heavy reliance on Israeli drones and air-to-ground weaponry during its, May 2025 aggression against Pakistan, is part of this axis. So, speaking of India's strategic calculus, for New Delhi, already bruised diplomatically after its illegal military adventure in May, this new Middle East war presents both opportunity and danger. India's aggression against Pakistan left it largely isolated, with only Israel and, informally, some elements within the Taliban administration in Afghanistan offering rhetorical support. In stark contrast, major global powers remained either silent or critical and asking Pakistan and India both to de escalate. Now, with Israel once again at the heart of a regional war, India sees a renewed chance to reinforce its alignment with Tel Aviv and Washington, hoping to deepen trilateral intelligence and military cooperation. So, in this situation, New Delhi would likely seek to portray itself as the responsible regional power in contrast to Pakistan's alignment with Iran. It might also lobby Washington for even closer defense ties and undercut Islamabad's growing rapport with the Trump administration. But India faces risks too. Historically, New Delhi has been a supporter of Palestinian rights and, like Pakistan, has never formally designated Hamas as a terrorist organization. For decades, successive Indian governments championed the Palestinian cause in global forums, consistent with India's post colonial identity and non aligned movement legacy. However, under Prime Minister Modi, this posture has shifted sharply. The Modi government's deepening alignment with Israel stems from more than just strategic calculation. It reflects ideological parallels. Within Modi's Hindutva base, there is open admiration for Israel's militarism and occupation policies, which they view as a model for India's own approach to Kashmir. For these forces, Palestinian resistance is equated with terrorism, much as Kashmiri freedom movements are demonized in India. And the symbolism is not lost. Just as Israel violated Iranian sovereignty, so too did Prime Minister Modi's government violate Pakistan's borders in, May this year, drawing clear lines between these emerging alliances. Yet, this newer embrace of Israel also carries domestic and diplomatic risks. Too overt a tilt towards Israeli aggression could trigger backlash among India's large Muslim population and strain ties with the Muslim majority neighbors, especially in the Gulf. And all of this unfolds at a moment when Modi's government faces mounting domestic criticism, not only for its mishandling of the May conflict with Pakistan, but also for its deepening record of communal violence and rising anti Muslim hate crimes, including the horrific lynchings of Muslims under the pretext of cow protection going on for the last many years, all openly patronized by members of the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, of which Prime Minister Modi is a leader. For a government that still seeks to project India as the world's largest democracy and the leading voice of global south, these contradictions grow harder to ignore, especially as the global south overwhelmingly views Israel's aggression with deep opposition. Should India lean too far into the Israeli and US led camp during this conflict and afterwards, it risks undercutting its own narrative of South South solidarity. In a region as sensitive as South Asia, where smaller neighbors carefully calibrate their diplomatic positions, such posturing could deepen regional divides, strengthening Pakistan's hand as a more consistent anti war voice while making India's leadership claims in forums like BRICS Plus more challenging to sustain. Meanwhile, Islamabad finds itself navigating a moment of both peril and possibility. Emerging from a tense 4 day military aggression by India, during which Pakistan successfully downed several Indian aircrafts, including at least one Rafale, possibly more, while defending against Israeli supplied drones. Pakistan today is riding a wave of domestic military pride. The promotion of General Asim Munir to Field Marshal has only reinforced this nationalistic momentum. The recent visit of Field Marshal Asim Munir to Washington and his meeting with President Trump was both symbolically and diplomatically significant. A rare moment of high level US Pakistan military engagement, almost unprecedented because the last three military commanders who interacted with American presidents were also the presidents of Pakistan, meaning thereby they were military dictators. Now, this guy, Field Marshal Munir, is just that, a four-star military general with, you know, without having a political office. Well, at least overtly, not having a political office. President Trump, ever the showman, has repeatedly, almost obsessively claimed personal credit for brokering the so called ceasefire, embarrassing Prime Minister Modi's government and much to Islamabad's delight. Yet, Pakistan's diplomatic challenge is intricate. It cannot alienate Iran given geopolitical ties, sharing a 1,200-kilometer border almost, an intertwined religious cultural fabric, and not so rosy bilateral relations in the past. Islamabad now finds itself in a delicate balancing act, opposing Israel's aggression, extending moral support to Iran, while keeping open channels with Washington. It must not jeopardize its growing warmth with Washington, which remains crucial for, economic recovery, international financial support, and recently acquired, in its view, a recently acquired diplomatic and strategic upper hand over its arch rival neighboring India. So it must continue to lean on China as well, both for military technology, um, China's recent support during when India attacked Pakistan, and economic lifelines, especially in the context of China's humongous One Belt, One Road initiative, OBOR, with the heaviest chunk being its partnership with Pakistan under China Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC, even as US China rivalry intensifies. But you see, if handled skillfully, Pakistan could emerge from this crisis as one of the few regional players maintaining balanced relations with Washington, Beijing, and Tehran, an enviable position that could yield both geopolitical and economic gains. Now, coming to other South Asian, the South Asia as a broader South Asian region, how are the other states responding? Bangladesh has issued cautious condemnation of Israeli aggression, seeking to balance public sentiment with its economic priorities and ties to the West. And Sri Lanka has responded to the ongoing conflict by emphasizing its non aligned foreign policy and urging both countries to de escalate the tense situation through diplomatic initiative. Similarly, Nepal continues its traditional non-aligned posture. Maldives has also been, a small, has seen a small um, street protest, but its government is treading carefully. It has been silent. Afghanistan's Taliban, ironically, one of the few actors to signal informal support for India's May aggression, remains officially quiet, unwilling to, I think, antagonizing India, USA, on whom they rely heavily. If the Iran Israel war drags on, or worse, escalates into a broader regional conflict, the consequences for South Asia could be dire. Pakistan would face rising sectarian tensions at home, and as a result, internal as well as external pressures to take clear sides practically. Yeah, practically doing something instead of just saying. India could exploit the crisis to lobby for even greater US Israel backing, potentially escalating arms races in the region. Smaller states could suffer economic aftershocks, not just smaller states, Pakistan as well, and Pakistan and India also, will suffer the aftershocks from oil price spikes, supply chain disruptions, and the increased militarization of regional politics. The already fragile Pakistan India pause, to borrow the term from Prime Minister Modi, could easily collapse. It would easily collapse should the hardliners on either side choose to test each other's resolve amid the wider geopolitical churn. Now, let us absolutely be clear. Israel's aggression against Iran is illegal, provocative, and unjustifiable, just as its brutal oppression of the Palestinian people has been for decades. As leading journalists from Christiane Amanpour to Fareed Zakaria to Mehdi Hassan and others, honorable mentions, have repeatedly documented, Israel's constant claims that Iran is weeks away from a nuclear bomb are fabrications cynically used to justify endless cycles of war and occupation. And it has been happening for quite a while, since 2012 or maybe earlier, that the United States continues to shield Israel across multiple administrations, including the current one, speaks volumes about Washington's hypocrisy. But the duplicity does not end there. The so called Muslim world, with all its wealth and self proclaimed solidarity of a mythical Muslim Ummah, remains shamefully complicit. Some Gulf states have quietly given tacit approval to Israeli actions. I mean, through intelligence sharing and turning a blind eye to Israeli aggression. And Jordan, while claiming neutrality, openly used its air defenses during this current conflict from 16th to 20th of June. We are recording this episode on June 20th to intercept Iranian missiles and drones entering its airspace en route to Israel, as confirmed by Jordanian military statements itself. While Amman insists this was to protect Jordanian civilians and sovereignty, the reality is clear. Israeli Jordanian security coordination continues despite overwhelming public sentiment in Jordan opposing such cooperation, as has been noted in multiple reports, including recently published reports by the Middle East Eye and the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Now, this is not neutrality. This is, in effect, their silence is not neutrality. It is aiding one side in an illegal war of aggression, while Palestinians and Iranians alike remain under siege. It is a silence that enables further aggression. It is a aggression. It is a silence that betrays the very people these regimes claim to defend. Here in South Asia, we know too well the human cost of war. From Lahore to Delhi, Dhaka to Kabul, are lands bear the scars of conflict. Scars inflicted not by ordinary people, but by governments and elites who choose militarism over peace, shallow pride over precious human life. The Iran Israel conflict threatens to drag our region back toward those dark paths. But we must resist. We must resist. We must refuse to become pawns in imperial games, American, Israeli, or otherwise. We must reject proxy wars. We must reject sectarian manipulations and nationalist chest thumping. Across the global south, from Pakistan to India, from Nepal to Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bhutan, Afghanistan, millions of us stand for a different future, a future of peace rooted in justice, a future where no people, Palestinian, Iranian, Kashmiri, Afghan, or the Baloch, live under bombs, foreign occupation, or the repression and violations under their own military. A future where international law matters. It matters, not the might of the few. That is the stand of the true global South. And that is the voice of this platform, Unraveled. I'm Marvi Sirmed. Until next time, in solidarity for peace. Have a good one.